Castle from the STV Newsroom for the moment. For everyone on the team, good night.
Two candidates, one job.
Anyone that thinks that the sort of things that have been going on recently are helping the party, quite frankly, is deluded.
There has been some difficulties, but we'll drive forward because the cause of independence, as everybody must say, Ash and I agree, has never been greater.
The Alba Party leadership race comes to Scotland tonight. High stakes diplomacy. Will the Prime Minister's peace plan for Ukraine work out? And after the White House horror show, can European leaders rely on Donald Trump? Whoever wins the Alba leadership race has big shoes to fill. Alex Salmond led the pro-independence party from its creation in 2021 to its death last October. The party has been represented at Holyrood and Westminster by politicians who've defected from the SNP, although so far no one has been elected under the Alba banner. But recent opinion polling does give them some hope that this could change at next year's Holyrood election. There are two candidates vying for the job of the acting leader and former Justice Secretary Kenny McCaskill and the Edinburgh MSP and former Community Safety Minister Ash Regan. In their first head-to-head encounter, they have joined us in the studio. Alex Salmond didn't make any breakthroughs when he was leading Alba. What chance have you got, Kenny McCaskill?
I do think things are coming our way. We've had 8 wasted years under the SNP, and yet we've never needed independence more. Scotland's energy rich, and yet half of our people are in fuel poverty. We're an oil producing nation, and we're about to lose our refinery capacity. The only solution to that is independence, and that's why Alec was right to push for it, and I'll go again.
What chance have you got, Ash Regan?
Well, Alba was set up as a party that could maximise the number of pro-independence seats in the Parliament, and we've never needed that more, to be honest. Under my leadership, the Alba Party will prioritise the rights of women, protection and safeguarding of children, and putting more money into people's pockets. But the only way we'll be able to make that pitch to the electorate is by being in the room. You can't do it from outside of Holyrood. You have to be in there to make the political weather. I'm the person that can take the party forward. I've got the energy, the drive and the vision, and I think we could be the kingmakers of the next Scottish election.
But he's much more experienced than you. What makes you better than him?
Well, I was selected for the seat that Kenny vacated 10 years ago. So Kenny maybe gave up on independence or working towards independence 10 years ago. It's been out of Holyrood for a while, and I think we can see that under the leadership of the Alba Party, which Kenny has been a part of for the last 4 years, the party is a little bit stuck. It has felt like it hasn't really been connecting that well with the voters. But as you can see, over the last year, the polls have started to tick up. The most recent poll that I saw showed that the Alba Party was on course to get 8 seats in the next election. And that is because I've been in the Scottish Parliament making the political weather, making the party relevant. I've shown what I can do, and the public are starting to listen to Alba now.
I'll come to the polls in a minute, but Ash Regan says you've maybe given up on independence, Kenny McCaskill.
No, it's been a lifetime commitment, as it was with Alex Salmond. And I think, what I have is the experience, not just as a Justice Secretary. I've been in Westminster, but more importantly, I've got roots within the independence movement, because what's going to make the breakthrough for Alba in 2026 is galvanising the independent support. The independent support has been put to sleep by the SNP. The dead hand of Nicola Sturgeon has crushed the life out of it. What we have to do is to mobilise that, to make sure that people realise how we can do it and why we need to get it. We do it through a plebiscite election, and then we need to get it because we're energy rich yet fuel poor, and an oil refinery closing when indeed we're seeing Syria ramp up its oil production. It's perverse.
But for the next year, Ash Regan is in Parliament. Does that not give her an advantage?
Well, I think what it does is give Alba the advantage, and I'm delighted at the efforts that Ash has been making in Parliament and will continue to make. But a political party is not simply what it does in the parliamentary chambers, as Neil and I did in Westminster. It's what it does across the country. And as I say, what I have is deep roots within the independence movement, because we won't just make the breakthrough by the Alba Party. We'll make the breakthrough by mobilising the independent support, because there's a big independent support now that doesn't support the SNP. What we've got to do is to galvanise that support to us, as well as getting SNP support to recognise that Alba should be the second vote on the list.
But what it's not doing is winning votes. You've not had anybody actually elected. You talked about the polls. The one that you're talking about is a Norstat one in December, which put you on 5%. Actually, they had a more recent one, I think, in February, which put you on 3.4%, which wouldn't get you any MSP. So what's your strategy for next year's election?
Well, that would be my question to Kenny. Kenny has been in the leadership of the Alba Party since its inception. You know, when I joined the party, we were polling on something at 1 or 2% very consistently over those last few years. So I think Kenny would need to set out in detail what he was going to do differently that would lead to a different outcome. Because if we carry on with the continuity, if we carry on doing things the same way that we were doing, we're not going to cut through with the voters. So what I'm suggesting is that we turn the page, if you like, on Alba. We put a fresh approach forward, which would be me. We have energy, vision. We reposition ourselves to listen to the voters and to give the voters something positive to vote for. That is the way we're going to connect with the voters, and that is the way Alba is going to become successful and get seats at the next election.
Okay.
Well, we have to push for independence, and we have to make sure that people realise both that it's possible. We need the how and the why. The how is by making 2026 a plebiscite election. The why is that if we're going to make the changes that are necessary to Scotland to grow our economy, to tackle poverty, then we have to be an independent nation. And not just that, to avoid heading towards World War III, with Scotland as the epicentre of a nuclear strike.
Is a plebiscite election, is that the same as what we were calling a de facto referendum during last year's election?
It's my strategy that I put forward during the SNP leadership contest, and that I have brought into the Alba Party and has become the Alba strategy. As far as I'm concerned, it's the only game in town for independent supporting parties right now. I'd be very keen to talk to the other parties, the SNP, the Greens, anyone else, because my plan is that if we get over 50% for pro-independence parties at the next election, I will go down and negotiate Scotland's exit from the UK.
I mean, I was in the SNP for many years, as you know, Colin, and actually it used to be the position of the SNP. So actually what we're seeking to do is put Alba in the position that the SNP used to adopt, and we've been put there because of the decision of the UK government not to provide the opportunity for Scotland to decide its future in a referendum. So we make it a plebiscite election. That was previously the SNP position.
So you're both agreeing on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about your strategy for the election campaign? Do you just stand in the lists? Do you stand in constituencies too? What would you both do?
My view is that we should become a list-only party for this next election. I would need to talk, if I become the leader, that would be the position that I would be putting forward. But we are a membership organisation, and I would want to put that to the membership of the party and have them agree to that. But I think that's our best strategy.
Well, membership will decide, but I also agree that it should be the list strategy. The strategy put forward by Alex Salmond in 2021, I think, was correct, but because of COVID, because of the venom shown by Nicola Sturgeon, because of the overhang of a court case for Alec, it didn't come right. 2026 is a vastly different occasion when people realise SNP 1 and 2, an SNP vote in the list doesn't deliver independent support. If you want to galvanise support for the independence movement, for the independence cause, then it's a vote for Alba that will make that difference. Alba for independence.
Quite a lot of antipathy to Nicola Sturgeon. You mentioned her twice there. What about John Swinney though? Could you work with John Swinney as First Minister, Kenny?
Well, the position is we will work with those who put forward the cause of independence. I've had disagreements with John over recent years, but I did work with him closely in the past when we served in Alex Salmond's cabinet. But you know, the cause of Alba will be to support the cause of independence and to work with all parties, not just the SNP, because there's now many independent supporting parties and many people who support independence but don't sign up for the SNP. We hope to galvanise them.
But I see some of your supporters online questioning whether John Swinney even supports independence. Do you think he does?
No doubt John does, but we've had 8 wasted years, and he's been part of that administration.
8 wasted years?
We've had 8 wasted years where the SNP have not taken...
Hang on, 8 wasted years since you left Parliament?
Well,
since you left the Scottish Parliament? It's been wasted since then, but not before that?
No, I actually think we drove matters forward for independence. I was part of the Alex Salmond's cabinet that took us to a referendum in 2014. I stepped down from government in 2014. I stepped down from Parliament in 2016. What there has been opportunities, certainly in 2019 when I was returned to Westminster, when we should have convened a convention, when the Scottish National Party should have taken things forward, and it didn't.
I was thinking you could work with John Swinney. You proved that during the budget negotiations.
I could, absolutely. You know, Alba has been represented by myself. We've been in the room through budget negotiations. I think I've shown that I am able to work constructively with other parties, as I would do with any party across Parliament. I do agree there have been many wasted opportunities in independence. and the SNP do not have a coherent strategy. In order to get us to independence. So that is the point of the ALBA party. If you think independence is urgent, and if you would like to hold the SNP's feet to the fire and push them on independence, then it would be a great idea to get as many ALBA representatives in there as possible, because even only in the last year, I am the only pro-independence member of that parliament that has put forward 2 parliamentary interventions. So one was on the extension of the Scottish Parliament Powers Bill. I didn't get the support of a single other member, and the other one was on the plebiscite election, for which I was voted down. But I am making those interventions on independence, and I will continue to do so.
Very briefly, how do you deal with the mess that your party's in? You just sacked your general secretary.
Dealt with it collectively, and as I say, that's why we look forward to our conference and we look forward to 2026 with optimism.
Well, the voting is about to open. The nominations have closed. Thanks for joining us on Scotland Tonight. Time now to hear from our Monday night panel.